Well, hello. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here, and thank you for having me. This is my first time, I think, on Calvin's actual campus, and it's lovely. It's very nice. So thank you again for the warm introduction. And thank you all for participating in this event. And I looked at the agenda, and it looks like it's going to be a great few days. And I have several staff here who are going to be participating in panels, and I'm thankful for them and for their presence as well. I want to, of course, thank the Calvin team who have brought us all together and hosted us here on the campus and did all the planning for this convening. And thank Carrie, who I'm pretty convinced that in another life she's going to be a full-time event planner because she is very meticulous and detail-oriented, and she plans all the events at the prison, and I can tell you there's a lot that goes into it. So thank you, Carrie, for that. And thank you, everybody from Calvin. I got to do a lot of thank yous to start out with. So I want to thank all of the current post-secondary partners that are in the room for your work over the last few years and for the opportunities that you all help create every day for our incarcerated men and women in this state. And I also want to thank the potential future partners that are in this room, because that's very exciting, and that's why we're here. So thank you for being here. Together, we can all achieve our goal of continuing to expand access to these programs inside of our facilities. Of course, our education staff, some of which are over here and some are over here, I want to thank them and our facility staff for helping and for actually making these programs a reality by getting them to run inside of our prisons, because that's not an easy task. And for any of you who are already working inside prisons in your own states, if you're from another state, you know that having staff's commitment and buy-in is critically important to the success of a program like this. So it's absolutely imperative that we include the staff and make them a part of the program. And finally, of course, most important, not here in person, but back on the campus, back at MTU, I want to thank our students. There may be some here in the audience too. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I want to thank them who have shown what the promise of this program really is, and have, in doing that, have helped us lay the groundwork for the future and for why we're gathering here today. We're here to celebrate and prepare for the permanent return of Pell Grants for incarcerated students. So, as you heard a little bit, Todd mentioned that this began for us a decade ago. So this isn't the beginning of our story, but it's also not the end. We're kind of somewhere sandwiched right in the middle. But it's a crucial step in our journey, and we are hopeful that this will continue long into the future. So I've been director since 2015. I've been in the Department of Corrections for 25 years, about 26 years maybe, and again, the director since 2015. And this topic is one of the most important topics that I have had the opportunity to work on. It's one of the topics that, as director, I am most dedicated to, and have a number of goals since day one focused on the expansion of education in prison. I talk a lot about making prison time productive time, and that's one way that we do that is through the delivery of these programs, and with a focus on education and skills building to prepare individuals for their eventual return home. I also wanted to make sure that the environment in our prisons was one of purpose for everybody. And our efforts to that end included the establishment of 3 vocational villages, which are now a national model for correctional vocational programs in the country. And in fact, today, before I came here, I was down in Jackson at one of our vocational village sites, hosting people from around the country there. So Michigan really is leading in this and is a model for others to replicate. Thanks to the work of our MDOC staff and our partners, our administrative agencies, and employee partners all across the state of Michigan, we currently have record employment rates for parolees. That's also something we're focused on and something I'm very proud of, because what it means is that prison time is productive time, that giving somebody an education, giving somebody skills does translate into helping them be successful on the outside, getting employment, changing the trajectory of their life. Another thing that we've done, and all of these things kind of go hand in hand, we've worked with the Department of State to finally address the multi-decade, and this is a multi-decade problem. I told you I've been in the department for 25 years. When I started in the department, and shortly thereafter, I started working on this issue of trying to figure out a way to get individuals a simple ID card before they left prison, a birth certificate, things that we all take for granted. And it shouldn't have taken decades, but it did. But today, we have a partnership with the Department of State, and I'm proud to say that nearly everybody leaves the Michigan Department of Corrections now with a state ID or a driver's license if they're eligible. Since 2021, more than 12,000 people have left prison with a state ID. That's a huge accomplishment. You know, several years ago, the department had this philosophy of helping people get birth certificates, and we would pay for it, but not until they got out. Well, we all know, and those of you who are familiar with this business knows, that the most critical time of leaving prison is right when you get out. And it takes a long time to get a birth certificate. And so, you know, it wasn't rocket science, but we finally decided, let's just pay for them while they're in. Novel idea. So we started doing that, and now everyone gets a birth certificate as well. So those are all really important things, and they show that the department has been able to be creative and innovative and get out of a box of thinking and think outside the box, really, and accept and, in fact, seek out new ways of doing things. And so I'm really proud of that as well. Before discussing Michigan's role in supporting the national debate on post-secondary education in prison, as well as my future plans for our prisons, I want to discuss why this effort is so important. So imagine if I told you you could only use the knowledge you obtained as a child, that you only could have knowledge up until you're age 12. Would you have the same interests today? Would you have the same hobbies? Would you have the same social connections? Would you have the same view of the world and of your responsibility in terms of what your role in your community was? Would you have your same level of financial stability in your life? Would your family dynamics be the same? Would you feel differently about your children or their children or what they might be able to achieve in their lifetimes? Would you even be in this room today if you were only limited by the knowledge you had at 12 years old? Obviously, our answers to these questions would be different if we were limited in our ability to pursue greater knowledge throughout our lives. So when we think about people who are incarcerated, a lot of them stopped their education at that age and didn't have the opportunity to gain knowledge from that point. So that's why this is so important. Education is a key element in shaping our lives, no matter who we are. It doesn't end at a predetermined age or on a predetermined date. We all have to benefit from continuing to learn throughout our lives up until today. In fact, my staff that are here today hear me address every new correction officer class and every new class of new employees in our department. And the one thing I say to each and every one of them is, when you join this department, you should be learning every single day. Every day on this job, we should be learning, because we all have things to learn, and we all have the ability to grow with that. And so we are all learning, and that should include the men and women who are incarcerated in our facilities. We've likely heard the statistics about education and employment, education and social mobility, and even education and recidivism. They're all true and all in their own ways impressive. The positive impacts of education are immeasurable. Education is an equalizer, it's an amplifier, it is an opportunity every day to change the world around us. As a result, there can be no doubt that education is central to individual success, the success of families, and the success of communities, and an opportunity for each individual person. That's why it's so important that Congress has decided to once again allow incarcerated individuals to access Pell Grants in order to pursue post-secondary education in prison. This reauthorization comes after an elimination of Pell Grant eligibility for incarcerated individuals beginning in 1994, even though they had had it for 3 decades. I remember earlier on in my career, prisoners would tell me all the time about how they used to be involved in college, and then it went away. And they'd always ask and wonder, will it ever come back? You know, back then, I didn't have a crystal ball, and I certainly didn't know I was going to be here 20 years later. But I am, and so are some of them. And so the conversations now are quite interesting because, it is back, and it was some waiting, but we're glad that it's here. So that policy decision, though, to eliminate most of the opportunities, it was across the country, and it was here in Michigan as well. So we went 2 decades without having these programs in our state, but we never gave up the hope that they would return. So the cornerstone of the effort to start thinking about returning them came in about 2013 when Michigan, again, was a leader then, and just one of a few states that were selected for a program that you might have heard about called Pathways to Post-Secondary Education. And that was overseen by Vera, and with the financial support of the Kellogg Foundation. And the project allowed for a limited reinstatement of post-secondary opportunities in 2 of our prisons and to study the impact of the programs. And the impact of that was immediate, of course, for the students who were participating in the programs. Many saw the bigger picture that we were already building toward. That project, including the data it collected, helped show that not only could post-secondary programming occur in the prison, but it could be also impactful on the facilities themselves and, of course, on post-release outcomes. That's one of my favorite things about providing education in prison. There's so many benefits, and the benefit is to the whole facility and to how it operates and how it impacts staff. The partners for that program, the post-secondary program, included at the time Jackson College and the Department of Corrections and Vera. And we continue to work with those entities to this day based on the solid foundation and the solid partnership that was developed back then in 2013. Kind of like the partnership that we developed with Calvin 10 years ago and continues to this day. Within a few years of that, a second effort started here in Michigan. That was thanks to the drive of what at the time was Calvin College, now Calvin University, and Calvin Theological Seminary. So some of the Calvin leaders got together and they took a little trip out of state. Many of you know this story, but they were very impressed with what they saw down at the prison in Louisiana, Angola, and they came back and they put their heads together and they decided to approach the department and try to replicate that program and bring a program like that here to Michigan. And that's how this relationship started. From that, the seeds of the Calvin Prison Initiative were planted in Ionia, starting with the offering of non-credit classes and then ultimately growing into one of the most highly regarded prison post-secondary programs in the nation now. Well, it's easy to forget just how novel the Pathways Project and the Calvin Prison Initiative were at the time. It can't be understated. Not only were programs not in existence in a meaningful way in Michigan in 20 years, but the political and the policy landscape for the programs was very challenging. We actually had language in statute that said no taxpayer dollars can be used to fund higher education in prison. So that's what the landscape was. But we heard many voices that said it wasn't that they simply couldn't, we couldn't have them, like I said. By that language, they were saying, you will not have them. I made it clear that the Department of Corrections was not going to accept that. Education is central to achieving success and, again, making prison time productive time, promoting long-term public safety and making our state stronger. We know that 98% of people in prison are going home. Our motto in the Department of Corrections is public safety. That's not our motto, that's our mission, sorry. That's what we do. We provide public safety to the people of the state of Michigan. How do we do that? We do that by running safe and secure prisons. That's what we do. We're very good at that. We know when we take people out of society, we don't have victims because they can't hurt anybody while they're in prison. But the reality is 90-some% of people are going home. So what we're after is long-term public safety. That's short-term public safety when you lock people up, but they're going home. So in the department, we focus on how do we create long-term public safety. Well, we do that by doing what we're doing here today. What we're doing here with our partners at Kelvin, with our partners at Jackson, with our partners at Hope, and the hopefully other partners that are coming on board, which is to provide opportunity. And when we provide opportunity, we create long-term public safety because we know that when you do that, it changes lives. It changes families, it changes communities. And so that's what we're after, and that is the value of these programs. We kept pushing forward and collaborating with our partners and spreading the word nationally. I made several trips to Washington, D.C. with my association, Correctional Leaders Association, which some of you are here from other states, and your directors are also a part of this association. We went, and in fact, I'm going in 2 weeks back to Washington to continue to lobby. But I spent a lot of time there talking about the value of prison education, the value of reinstating the Pell Grants, and what that would mean to state systems like ours and to public safety in general. So even in doing that, it was still a slow and difficult process. We saw our first real progress when the Second Chance Pell pilot was announced in late 2015. Now, this was an experimental pilot, and it would allow us to implement the program on a smaller basis by allowing incarcerated students to be able to access the Pell Grant again. And because we had been working already with the Pathways Project, Michigan was well positioned to get in on that experimental pilot, and we did. And Jackson College, this is one of the things that I always like to brag about everywhere I went across the country, that Jackson College received the most Pell Grants of anybody in the nation here. And that was quite an accomplishment. And we're pretty proud of that. And Jackson is still a great partner today. But Jackson received the most Pell, and then Delta, another college here, and Mott also received allocations in 2016. So that allowed us to start to grow. But suddenly we faced a new challenge. After not being able to do anything in this space for decades, now all of a sudden we had these programs and we had to quickly ramp up and get ready to launch them and support the students, the sites, and to make it happen. Because now kind of the weight of the world starts to be on your shoulders because others are looking at you to see how you're going to make this work. And it really took a lot of partnership between the schools, the leadership at our prisons, and our education team to get these programs up and running and keep them going. Because remember, we're running a big prison system. We still have tons of other things that have to be done. We still have to manage a classification system and get people in the right security level and the right beds. And they still, even though they're having education, they still have to have the programs that the parole board wants for them. And they still have a number of other needs. So juggling all of this and now having this other big big piece of it to sort of put the jigsaw puzzle together, it was a lot of work on the part of everybody involved. But it was a success. So we worked through all of those, and we began to see the number of incarcerated students rise. Of course, as you can imagine, once this word got out, there's lots of people interested in being a part of these programs again. So that was probably the most rewarding aspect, and actually really drives you to continue to do the hard work, put in the hard work, because you see what is happening and how the change happens almost immediately in people. And so that really helped us continue to propel forward. The pilot site was launched late in the Obama administration, and it wasn't clear. We were a little worried because we didn't know once the Obama administration left if it would go away again, because we had seen that happen too. But we kept the faith, and what we saw was that voices across the spectrum, from the left, from the right, from all over, were singing the same message, that this is a good thing and that we need to continue this. And so, fortunately, it was continued. And we continue to be involved in it. We worked hard throughout that period to not only invest in our education programs, but in all of our evidence-based programs that we deliver inside of our facilities. So coupled with our post-secondary programs and those programs, our prison population began dropping. And it dropped pretty dramatically. And it's declined by over 37% since its peak several years ago, and also achieving the lowest recidivism rate. Today, Michigan has the lowest recidivism rate it's ever had, and we are 4th best in the entire nation. And I am convinced, so now we're at 22.1. So that's pretty darn good, but it's not zero. Somebody asked me that the other day, and can you do any better? How much better can you do? At first, I thought that was a trick question, but the reality is, first of all, you can always do better, no matter what it is. We can always improve, and we should always be improving. But secondly, especially when you're talking about human beings and you're talking about this topic, you can do better until you reach zero. So that is what we strive for. We strive to continue to do better and hopefully get even lower. But we're 4th best, and we're pretty proud of that. So it was clear from Michigan's results that education served as a key component in our effective correctional policy, and in 2015, that's when we launched our vocational village model. That is a model, if you don't know it, for career and technical education, and it's expanded to 3 sites in our state now. We have 3 vocational villages. They're skilled trades training centers inside prison. They teach in-demand trades, and everybody who participates receives a state or national credential or license or certification. It's been emulated, and we've had, just like I told you today, some individuals from other states here to visit it. It was a new concept for us. We built it from the ground up, and it has quickly gained attention of state and national policymakers who are looking for a better way to do corrections, who do understand that we can't build our way out of this, we can't spend our way out of this, and that these smart investments pay big dividends in the long run. The programs developed and supported in Michigan, again, showed that, and we have been very fortunate to continue to expand. We're getting ready to break ground on a diesel mechanics program in Jackson, and one of the things I'm really proud about is that a lot of these vocational programs and the expansion of them in the state of Michigan has come from our employer partners. Again, we have our education partners for post-secondary education, but we have some phenomenal employer partners in the state of Michigan who have come to us and actually told us about their need and have said, we have a need for diesel mechanics. We have a need for welders, for CNC machinists, whatever it is. For tree trimming and line clearance. We actually have a tree trimming line clearance program here that is funded by the DTE Energy Foundation. That's a phenomenal program that is putting people in high-paying jobs, not after they leave prison, but the day they walk out the door. And so we're really proud of that as well. We know that that is also having an impact on recidivism in the state of Michigan, on better post-release outcomes, and on a declining prison population. And so we will continue to move forward with that. Incidentally, part of the Calvin program, it sits right next door, right alongside the vocational village, and they kind of, in a way, grew up together, I guess I could say. They both started out kind of small, helping each other, and every year they've both grown and grown. And that was also one of my favorite parts of the Calvin story, is how the students have worked together to help each other, and to where somebody is strong and somebody maybe needs a little bit of help. The Calvin students have helped the vocational village students in their study halls with their lessons. Maybe they needed help with math because some of our voc programs are very math intensive. And so that's been something that I don't know that we even anticipated that or foresaw that. But it kind of was a natural growth of what was going on there. And so that's been a great offshoot of that. And I don't think I'm letting the cat out of the bag, because I know my staff know, and that my ultimate sort of goal for what would happen at the Hanlon campus is that every individual who lives there would be involved in some form of post-secondary or vocational village, so that it would truly be a campus where every person there was involved in one of these programs. That doesn't exist anywhere that I know of, but it really is a community. And when you start to form that community inside prison, and everybody's focused on a like-minded goal, it changes things. And it keeps your eye on the ball. And it helps you to not be distracted from things that are otherwise pretty distracting in prison. You know, prison's not an easy place to learn, right? But we know that our learners have definitely overcome that barrier, because they are phenomenal, and they get great grades, and they're very focused and very determined. But imagine if everybody that was at that facility was a learner, was involved in one of these programs. So I hope we get to 0, but I hope we also get to 100%, right? 100% learners at the Hanlon campus, and 0% recidivism would be a great goal. Anyway, that's going to take a couple more years. Maybe. I don't know. How fast can you guys work? So people took notice of what was going on in Michigan and what was happening, and our post-secondary partners, our employers, and our federal policymakers. And I'm sure there was many factors that went into the decision to reinstate Pell. I'm sure that there were, because there was other things going on around the country. But I'm confident that Michigan was an often cited example that was offered when the conversation about whether or not this was the right thing to do was happening. This opportunity allowed additional schools to participate, and Michigan once again took advantage. So Calvin University, now Calvin University, somewhere in there, we went from Calvin College to Calvin University. I'm not sure what year that happened. So in 2019, Calvin University, yes. So Calvin University and Siena Heights both joined the Pell. For Calvin, this meant creating more permanency for the program, and it allowed Siena Heights to begin offering programming. Well, it wasn't awarded a Pell at this particular stage. Hope College and Western Theological Seminary also continued to develop their program in Muskegon, which I just visited last week, and now they're operating and credit bearing, and I almost accidentally wore something orange today. And then I realized that was Hope's colors, and I thought, I'm going to Calvin, I shouldn't wear something orange. The progress here in Michigan was clear, but we still were facing the question if this was going to be permanent. And so finally, at the end of 2020, we received our answer, and Congress passed legislation that formally and permanently restored Pell for incarcerated students. And Pell Grants for incarcerated students may stand alone as one of the few policies that got full support from the Obama administration, the Trump administration, and the Biden administration. And that just shows you that good policy can cut through politics. So the fact that we were able to achieve something like this when other people haven't been able to achieve their goals necessarily is pretty rewarding. So this is exciting news for us, and we'd fought to achieve this for a long time. And now that our expansion is a reality, we want to make sure that we remain at the forefront of this effort. So we've been working really hard across the state. Michigan's a huge state. It's very geographically diverse. We have prisons all over the place. But we've been working to recruit new partners. And so today we have 6 post-secondary partners within our program and our initiative. Calvin is one, Hope Western Prison Education Program, Siena Heights Rising Education Program. We have Delta College, Mott College, and Jackson College, covering over a third of our facilities. And by this time next year, we hope to have at least 10 college and university partners who are offering programs in our facilities. And then that would mean we would be at about half of our facilities. Can we do more? Hopefully. We're working on that little by little. We always say to us, it's about quality, not quantity. So we want to continue to expand, but we want to do it the right way. We also want to strengthen the academic tracks between schools and improve the environment for people to access higher education when they leave. So they started with us and they're leaving, and we want to be able to make sure they have appropriate pathways and support to be able to continue their education when they go home. And hence, here we are at the consortium, and this is a great thing. It was formally launched here this week, and this will give our efforts additional structure, a unified voice for continuing to speak with state and federal policymakers, and greater opportunities to benefit students. It's vitally important that we continue to promote equity and diversity within these programs as part of this effort, with a particular focus on reaching historically disadvantaged populations. One of the wonderful things we've seen at our graduations is a considerable number of students who are the first in their family to earn a college degree. And my hope, and I'm sure your hope as well, is that even though they might be the first, they won't be the last. And we see that. And that's probably, if I had to say of this whole entire experience, the most moving part of it has been going to those graduations. And in particular, the big one, that's what I call it. The big graduation, the one we waited for. We were all amped up for it, getting ready for our first bachelor's degree graduation. It took several years because 20 students a year, right? Building up, and we were talking about what kind of graduation we were going to have. And, the department has had to, do a lot of changing itself, right? Prison's a closed environment. Normally we don't let people in prison. We certainly don't let family members come deep into the beast, right? But this was important, right? This was an achievement. And we think about your own, for those of you who went to college, graduated, even went to whatever. Did you go to your graduation by yourself? No, you had your family there, and they were taking pictures and crying and acting foolish and all of that kind of stuff. Well, you expected that. Now imagine these men. Nobody even expected them to go to college. Truthfully, people expected them to go to prison. And now they're in prison and they finish college. That is an achievement. And so I think in my entire career, probably one of the most prideful experiences that I've had was being there and witnessing that, being a witness to that. So I'm kind of off topic here, or off track a little bit here, but working in prison is hard. Living in prison is hard. There's not a lot of inspirational things that you see. Well, there weren't. I'll say there were not. I think today there are, and there's more and more all the time. But when you have a hard day as a director, as a teacher, as a principal, whatever your job is, you think about these moments and you think this is what propels you to continue to go forward and to take the beatings that you take trying to fight for the right path forward, which is to continue these kinds of programs. And so we got to have that great graduation, and it was great because families were there, and there was a lot of joy and a lot of pride and a lot of sense of accomplishment. And there was kids of incarcerated people who are now going to college because of that. And that is the promise of this program, right? Because now we are changing communities, and we really are creating a safer and stronger Michigan. So we do that now in the state of Michigan, and not just for Calvin graduations, for all graduations. And we have cake, we have graduation cake, we have all that stuff. Families get to visit, and it's great. So really excited about that. I'm also really excited about the way we're taking historic steps with technology, right? So again, we're gonna have college, but you can't have college without technology. I mean, I don't know, I went to Michigan State for my undergrad, and I don't think I mean, back then, we didn't have chisels and, whatever. I mean, I don't know. I didn't even have a laptop, I guess, so maybe I'm not a good example. Okay, I'll use my daughter as an example. She goes to the other university, University of Michigan. She's a lot smarter than me, which is what you want for your kids, right? So she goes there, but, she's got all the technology. She's, she knows what she's doing. But I can't imagine her going to college at the University of Michigan without having access to technology, right? I mean, everything they do. So we got to get some technology. How are we going to do that? Well, we got to go to our legislative partners and convince them that it's important to fund technology in prisons so that we can continue to do these things. And they agreed because they also see the value in this. So Michigan is investing a lot in technology. We have a Wi-Fi, $30 million Wi-Fi investment right now to Wi-Fi enable all of our prisons. And that is a game changer because we only have limited space in the classroom, but we have unlimited numbers of people who want to get a space in the classroom. And so we want them to be prepared so that when they get a space in the classroom, they're as prepared as they can be. Having Wi-Fi is going to allow us to reach a lot more people inside of our institutions and give them access to educational materials, give them access to self-help materials, and it's going to allow our incarcerated learners to be able to use their technology back in their housing unit and in their living areas and all of those kinds of things. So we're really excited about that. We've also invested in our first true learning management system, Google Classroom, and that has not been without pain, but it is certainly a source of pride. We are rolling out Chromebooks all across our department, and so this network will serve as the future platform for our college programs. So that's very exciting as well. Lots of important things that are going on that are going to continue to help us keep our foot on the gas pedal because we have great momentum in this state for what is going on in terms of transforming our correctional facilities and delivering these types of programs. We've also, importantly, because I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about what happens after you leave prison. Well, after you leave prison, it's important to have supports in the community. And Kyle, who's here, heads up our reentry offender success part of our department. And since Kyle's taken over that area, our focus has shifted completely to performance-based contracts. It's not a particularly novel idea, but one we didn't have before, right? So when you contract with us to provide services to our population, the expectation is that you actually will, and that you will measure the things that we think are important, like helping people get jobs and helping people get stable housing and helping people with transportation, or if they have a job, helping them with the tools and things that they need to be able to be successful in that job. So we have made a lot of changes on that side of the house in order to support our reentering citizens and help them have a stable atmosphere to exist in to help promote their success. And part of that is our our performance-based contracts. So we've got a lot going on. Um, and that's just a little bit. I could probably stand up here and talk to you a lot more, but it's an exciting time. I'm very excited to be able to continue to be the director of this department. You know, I look at all the things we've accomplished, and they're great, but there's so much work to do. There's so much farther that we can go, and we will continue to do that. We acknowledge we can't do it alone. We need all of you, and we need you know, all of our partners in the legislature and in the courts and everywhere to understand what we're doing, understand the value of investing in this, because investing in this today is going to save us tomorrow. So, thank you.